Brent Hinds didn't smile when he said it. He leaned forward, looked straight at the interviewer, and dropped the line that would ignite a storm in the metal world. They're so full of themselves. Disgusting. And yeah, they used Autotune because they can't sing. For fans, it was like a punch to the gut. Mastodon, one of the most respected metal bands of the last 2 decades, accused by their own former friend of faking the very thing that made them unique, their raw, gritty vocals. The internet went wild. Some fans defended Mastodon, saying their sound was always about experimentation, about mixing heavy riffs with psychedelic touches. Others felt betrayed, claiming they had believed every note was pure and untouched. But this wasn't just about Autotune. This was about pride, friendship, and a band that once stood united against the music industry's obsession with perfect sound. Brent knew the band from the inside. He had toured with them, shared backstage jokes, and been there in the sweaty rehearsal rooms where Mastodon's early songs were born. He remembered the nights when the group talked about keeping metal real. No tricks, no fake polish. And yet, somewhere along the road, things had changed. Brent's voice dripped with bitterness as he told the story. He said it started small, subtle pitch correction on a track here and there. Then, during a recording session, he heard something that didn't feel right. The vocals were too smooth, too perfect. When he asked about it, he claimed they brushed it off, saying, "It's just for texture. It's still us." But to Brent, it was more than just texture. It was a betrayal of what they stood for. They started believing their own hype, he said. When you can't take criticism anymore, when you're more worried about sounding perfect than being real, that's when the soul is gone. The story didn't stop there. Brent hinted that his comments weren't only about music. There were personal tensions brewing behind the scenes. Arguments over songwriting credits, fights over touring schedules, even disagreements about the band's image and merch. But the Autotune claim, that was the match that set the fire. Metal blogs picked it up instantly. Headlines screamed about betrayal, hypocrisy, and the death of authenticity in modern rock. Mastodon fans were now split into 2 camps, the loyalists who dismissed Brent as bitter, and the doubters who wondered if their favorite band had indeed been polishing their music in the studio. Brent didn't back down. If anything, the more people criticized him, the more he doubled down. "I've got nothing to hide," he said. "I know what I heard, and I know what they became." The question now wasn't just whether Mastodon used Autotune. It was what happened to the band that once swore they never would. And that question would lead deeper into the tangled history between Brent Hinds and the men of Mastodon. The words that lit the fire. The moment Brent Hinds' interview went public, the rock world erupted. It wasn't just a casual remark in passing. It was a direct hit aimed squarely at the heart of Mastodon's image. Brent didn't mumble his way around the topic. He said it clearly, in that unmistakable blunt tone. They're so full of themselves. Disgusting. They even use Autotune because they can't sing. To fans, this was a bombshell. Mastodon had always been known for pushing musical boundaries, for blending progressive metal with raw energy. They were the band that refused to play by the rules. And now, here was one of their own, a man who had shared the stage with them for years, tearing into them in public. It didn't take long for the internet to do its thing. Social media feeds lit up with arguments, insults, and speculation. Some fans agreed with Brent, saying they had noticed the too perfect vocals during live shows. Others defended Mastodon fiercely, accusing Brent of being bitter or jealous. Brent's choice of words wasn't just criticism, it was personal. Calling someone full of themselves in the metal world hits harder than any guitar riff. It suggests arrogance, ego, and a loss of authenticity. The very things heavy metal claims to stand against. And then, to add the claim of Autotune, that was like accusing a punk band of lip-syncing. Behind the scenes, people close to the band whispered that this wasn't a sudden outburst. The tension had been building for years. There were stories of backstage arguments, of creative differences during recording sessions, of Brent feeling sidelined when it came to songwriting decisions. Some even said he hated the way the band's music had become more polished, less raw. But the Autotune accusation cut deeper. In metal, imperfection is part of the beauty. A slightly off note can feel more real than any studio perfect track. For Brent, that rawness was sacred. For Mastodon's newer style, it seemed studio magic was becoming more of a tool, and for him, that was unforgivable. The fallout wasn't limited to just fans and online debates. Industry insiders started taking sides. Other musicians quietly messaged Brent, either to show support or to warn him he'd crossed a line. Journalists lined up to get Mastodon's response, but the band stayed silent, at least for the moment. That silence only made the drama bigger. The longer Mastodon didn't respond, the more people wondered if Brent had told the truth. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Brent seemed almost amused. He didn't backtrack, didn't soften his words, didn't call it a misunderstanding. If anything, he seemed ready to double down. What no one knew at that moment was that Brent wasn't done talking. The next time he spoke about it, he would reveal something that made the whole situation even more complicated and a lot more personal. Because this wasn't just about music. It was about loyalty, betrayal, and the kind of wounds that only form when a band's family bond begins to break apart. The rumor that wouldn't die, the news, didn't fade away. If anything, it grew bigger every hour. Rock fans from every corner of the internet were suddenly talking about one thing: Brent Hinds accusing his own fellow musicians of using Autotune. And not just any fellow musicians. This was Mastodon, a band that built their reputation on raw energy, heavy riffs, and the idea that they were real. For years, Mastodon had been seen as one of the last truly authentic metal bands, the kind that didn't rely on studio tricks or pop polish. So when Brent's words came out, they used Autotune because they can't sing. It hit like a hammer. Some thought it was just Brent being Brent, speaking his mind with no filter. Others said it was proof of a much deeper problem inside the band. The internet detectives got to work. Old concert videos were dug up, played back in slow motion. People claimed they could hear the Autotune in certain live performances, while others swore it was just the natural strain of singing night after night. Music forums lit up with debates that went on for pages. One fan wrote, "If this is true, it's over for me. I thought these guys were better than that." Another replied, "Autotune doesn't mean they're bad. Every band uses it these days, even the legends." But the real question hanging over everyone's head was, why would Brent say it publicly? Brent wasn't just some outsider throwing stones. He was part of the same family, someone who had shared stages, hotel rooms, and tour buses with these guys for years. If he was calling them out now, that meant something had broken. But what? People started to remember little moments from past interviews. Times when Brent had looked uncomfortable during praise for the band's vocals. Offhand comments where he hinted at not being into certain production choices. It all started to form a puzzle, and the picture wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, the rest of Mastodon stayed silent. No tweets, no statements, nothing. That silence only added fuel to the fire. Fans kept waiting for Troy, Bran, or Bill to say something, but the band's social media pages stuck to promoting tour dates and merch. Every day, the speculation grew. Was Brent bitter about something behind the scenes? Was this about music or money? Some even suggested it might be a publicity stunt to get people talking about the band again. But those who knew Brent's personality said he wasn't the type to play games. If he said something, he meant it. And that made the situation even more tense, because if he was telling the truth, Mastodon's image could be in real danger. By the end of the week, what started as one blunt statement had turned into a storm, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Brent seemed almost calm, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. But the real twist was still coming. One that would make fans question not just Mastodon's music, but the very friendships that kept the band alive.